Amazon, Apple, Louis Vuitton, Tesla, Glock. What do all of these brands have in common? Feel free to.
Top of the line.
Top of the line. Good.
Very well known.
Very well known.
Branded, yeah.
Very well branded, yep. Lots of people have them. Very well spread out. I would also say that whether we've tried them or not, maybe we have them, maybe we've just heard about them, we have a certain level of respect for them, right? Might even say we highly regard them. So that's the phrase we're going to be looking at, is highly regard. So today we're going to look at that phrase, highly regard, in Scripture, so that we can find out how and why we should hold other men or people in high regard. So I have a second question. Who are some men we hold in high regard? I would say that you guys probably hold John MacArthur in high regard, Jim Osmond, Paul. Some others might be people like Daryl Harrison, Kyle Swanson, Tucker Carlson. Right? A lot of us haven't met these people. I've never met John MacArthur, but I've read his works and listened to him enough that without even meeting him, I already have a high expectation and regard for him, having never met him before. I was actually, in researching this, I was writing of Sophocles, and he was writing about a guy named Solon. And Solon was visiting Egypt for the first time, and apparently the people of Egypt were excited. They'd never met him before. He'd never come to Egypt before. But they were excited because he had a reputation. He was a lawmaker. He was a poet. He was a philosopher. They'd never heard him before, but he was coming for the first time. They'd probably heard of him, maybe read his writings, and they were excited for him. And even though the Philippians had already met Epaphroditus, unlike Solon, that was the exact same attitude that is commanded of the Philippians from Paul. So if you don't already know, we're going to be in Philippians 2:29 today. So I'll read it for you. I'll give you a little bit of context. I'll read it, started in verse 25. So he says, "But I thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger and minister to my need, because he was longing for you all and was distressed because you had heard that he was sick. For indeed he was sick to the point of death. But God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but also on me, so that I would not have sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore I have sent him all the more eagerly, so that when you see him again you may rejoice, and I be less concerned about you. Receive him then in the Lord with all joy, and hold people like him in high regard, because he came close to death for the work of Christ, risking his life to compensate for your absence in your service to me." So Paul's sending this letter to the Philippians, actually via Epaphroditus, and he was wanting to tell them, hey, he's not sick anymore, and I want to encourage you to hold him in high regard and to be joyous at his coming. Look forward to it. So we need to look at this word, figure out what it means. So the English definition via the Merriam-Webster dictionary would be to have great respect for someone or something. If we go back to the Greek word is actually entimos, and it's described as valued, dear, more honorable, precious, and in reputation. So if you take that Greek word, it's actually used 5 times in Scripture. So we look at the context. So it's used 3 times to refer to someone having good reputation, 2 times Luke, 1 time in our passage. Then it's used 2 other times in reference to something having good reputation, both in 1 Peter. So starting Luke 7:2, when Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he went to Capernaum. Now a centurion slave who was highly regarded by him was sick and about to die. So start off with centurion slave, highly regarded. Second is Luke 14:8. Now he began telling a parable to the invited guests when he noticed how they had been picking out the places of honor at the table, saying to them, whenever you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for someone more distinguished than you may have been invited for him. So more distinguished right there. A wedding guest. Our passage, Philippians 2:29, receive him then in the Lord with all joy and hold people like him in high regard. And the other 2 are in the same passage in 1 Peter. It's 3 verses. So 1 Peter 4-6. And coming to him as to a living stone, which has been rejected by people, but is choice and precious. there it is right there, in the sight of God, you also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For this is contained in Scripture, behold, I am laying in Zion a choice stone, a precious cornerstone, precious right there, and the one who believes in him will not be put to shame. Yeah.
No.
So yeah, it's used right there again, obviously referring to an object as the stone, which technically that's a person, it's Christ, but same idea. So now we have the what of what the word means, and we have how it's used. We can go back to the text, and we can figure out why Paul uses that specific Greek word when he's telling the Philippians, refer to him in this way, have this regard for him. So it's pretty easy. You just go back to the text. Paul lays it out right for you. He says in verse 30, it's because of the dedication Epaphroditus had for the work of Christ, right? He said he came close to death for the work of Christ. It's pretty hard to be more dedicated than that. That's all you have to give. So when we see men like Epaphroditus who have that type of dedication for the work of Christ, in what ways should we think about them? Paul commands us to honor people like that. So then the question is, how do you honor people like that? Well, first of all, you need to find them, right? Find men that have this dedication for Christ. And two, once you found them, listen to their sermons. Read their books. Listen to their podcasts. Watch their interviews. And by extension, if a guy like John MacArthur says, hey, this guy, Kyle Swanson, he wrote a great book. You should go check it out. Well, we already have a high regard for John MacArthur. And if he's going to put his reputation online and say, hey, this guy, Kyle Swanson, he wrote a good book. Go check it out. Go see what he's written about. See if it's good. So the more we do this, the more we grow in godliness. And then I think that we ourselves will be striving for that same work. So then we ourselves will be men of good reputation.